First, before we get started, I'd like to just mention that this presentation is based on a recent publication from 2020. So anybody interested might be able to find that in the Heritage Language Journal. Just a quick definition of heritage language based on Valdes's definition. We conceptualize the heritage language as a non-majority language that is spoken and used by individuals who are considered to be a linguistic minority. So why is heritage language maintenance important? Although the benefits of bilingualism are really well documented. So becoming and staying bilingual is really hard work, and the road to bilingualism is not an easy one, as Dr. Szilagyi also talked about this. And research shows that within 3 generations, the heritage language in most families is completely lost, and only very few families are able to keep up the heritage language. And in turn, the consequences of heritage language loss can be devastating on cognitive, social, as well as emotional levels. So the purpose of the study that my colleague Tunda and I are talking about today is to explore immigrant Hungarian American parents' perceptions on heritage language maintenance. And currently, there are almost 1.5 million Hungarians who live in the United States, although, as Dr. Szilagyi mentioned, not a lot of them speak Hungarian at home. Hatos's research mentions that the diversity of the Hungarian language community lies in the different ideologies about languages and multiple family language policies. And this research was done in Australia, so we thought we'd do something in the United States. Our review of the literature on Hungarian heritage language maintenance revealed 3 categories, at least based on what we could see and find, and I apologize if your work is not included here. But part of the research focuses on sociolinguistic characteristics, another part has a focus on linguistic aspects such as language shifts, code switching, and then yet another group of research focuses on language use patterns, attitudes to language use, and parents' practices and perceptions. And that's the category that we would like to contribute to. And I'm going to ask my colleague Tunda to speak to the literature review.
Okay, just a few words about the literature which we used for the study. So during the past probably 20-30 years, there is an increasing number of studies about intergenerational language transmission and language loss. And it is really interesting, especially in the context of the United States, because if we consider the language policies or the educational language policies in the United States, it is not really friendly to minority languages. Many states in the United States are English only and advocates for the English language and not really for the minority language. So in addition to this kind of political and ideological environment which we live in, the micro and macro environment of the language is very important because it determines the language vitality. Several previous studies talked about the importance of understanding the language vitality, which kind of the status of the language, to what extent, for example, parents or families believe that it will be a useful knowledge or skill for the children to speak the language. The previous presenters emphasized the importance of the parents in this heritage language maintenance. So we also built on the studies which we found, which explored the parents' roles and their perspectives. What we found is that although there is a huge number of studies mainly addressing Asian and Latino families in this respect, the Eastern European studies or Eastern European families are less researched or examined. And also it is very important to point out that although there are some studies with Slovak, Czech, Russian families, the unique cultural context of the Hungarian American communities and families definitely calls for deeper investigation. So because the study will address mainly the goals and what goals of the heritage language maintenance and also what facilitates the process, we did see in the literature that most of the family, regardless of the family background, want their children to speak the minority language for family communication, to ensure the ethnic and cultural identity for the children, as the previous presenters also mentioned, and also for academic and professional benefits which the children can experience. Some of the studies called attention to the parents' concern and hesitation for or about the heritage language maintenance. And I already mentioned that some studies, for example, the MACAB study, mentioned that when parents don't feel that the children can use the language later in academic or professional settings, they don't feel that it is important. And also when the parents feel that and it goes back to the language vitality, that the language does not have that status in the majority community, which would require for the children to know that the parents feel hesitant. Sometimes even their language proficiency do not really allow the parents to pass the language on to their children. Regarding what facilitates the language, we had some wonderful presentation before, and we addressed the community role in this process, but also I think it is important to point out that we are in the 21st century, so the media access, the technology, the travel, the connection through technology definitely is an important way to improve the language. I'm not going to go into the history of the Hungarian immigrants because we already heard about it, but I just want to kind of emphasize what was mentioned before, that after the 2000 or after 1990, the immigrants kind of represent a different population. Usually they are educated, professional, and geographically we don't have those tight communities. Usually they are spread throughout the United States.
Thank you, Tinda. So this is just a review of our research questions. The first two are quantitative in nature, and the second two are qualitative. So we use the mixed method study to answer these questions. The first two questions focus on Hungarian American parents, the constructs of their views about heritage language maintenance. And the second question relates to any relationships that may exist between parents' views about heritage language maintenance and other factors such as family heritage. And by that we mean whether both parents are Hungarians or just one of the parents has a Hungarian heritage. Another factor that we examined was time spent in Hungary. And the third one is participation in Hungarian communities. And this includes time spent with Hungarian friends and families, Hungarian school, Hungarian church, and other social organizations. And that should go with I think the second and the third got mixed up accidentally. So that's the time spent in Hungary. So what do the the participation in communities, sorry. Now I'm all frazzled in my head because of the presentation technicalities, but I'll get out of it. So the qualitative questions addressed what the parents perceived to be the goal of maintaining the heritage language and what factors they thought impacted the development and maintenance of the children's ability to speak Hungarian in this case. So both the quantitative and the qualitative questions addressed similar things, just using different data and different analyses. and it's not letting me advance as it should, so I'll just select it here. So our participants included 101 parents who filled out our survey. You can see the various, the gender makeup. The average age was 42 years. Average time that they have lived in the US was 21 years. And the mother tongue, most of them spoke Hungarian. Those who filled out the survey, a couple spoke English and some other languages. Obviously, there was some missing data on some of these. As Tuna mentioned, and other presenters before also, a lot of these immigrants came here to pursue a profession. So you can see that based on their education, they were highly educated, most of them, and the makeup of the family was about 50% all Hungarian, and then about half of the participants lived in a mixed family where one parent was Hungarian and the other one had a different heritage, spoke a different language. So we used an online survey to collect our data. We had demographic questions. We had Likert type statements with a range of 1 to 5. And all these statements were written by the researchers based on other literature that we looked at. And the questions addressed the importance of the maintenance of Hungarian, as well as strategies and difficulties related to heritage language maintenance. We included 2 open-ended questions to be able to answer the 2 research questions that were qualitative in nature. And this slide includes detail on the languages used by the participants to fill out our survey. We had the survey available in Hungarian as well as English, and the participants had a choice that they could make with this. To answer our 2 research questions that were quantitative in nature, we used factor analysis and linear multiple regression analyses. Factor analysis basically helps with reducing our data in a way that instead of the 18 items, we were able to represent the items with the factors that resulted from factor analysis that included items that somehow belong together through correlation. And linear multiple regression analyses were used to explore what factors might predict the factors, or in other words, the constructs that we found resulting from factor analysis. And so for that reason, we use the extracted constructs or factors for our dependent variables, because we wanted to see what impacted those constructs of parents' perceptions about heritage language maintenance. And the independent variables, as indicated in the research question, the second research question, were family heritage, time spent in Hungary, and then participation in Hungarian communities in the US. And we also included number of years having lived in the United States. 2 components or constructs emerged as a result of our factor analysis. One we called benefits of the heritage language, and the other we called elements for sustainable heritage language maintenance. And these 2 components accounted for about 42% of the total variance. I included a slide, hopefully you can see it all right, with the 2 factors or components that came out as a result of factor analysis. And this shows the model that fit best. Those are all the statements that loaded with each of the 2 factors. So you can also see stars with the statements. That means those were reverse coded because those were negative statements. And the factor loadings, you want to look for items loading higher than 0.5. You see a couple that are lower, but we felt those should be also included because they fit the model really well. And so sometimes you not only consider statistics and numbers, but you also think about the meaning of the items before you decide to include them or throw them out. And you probably also see that there's less than 18 items here. We had to exclude 7 items from the analysis because they did not fit the model well. So when when we think about the predictors of parents' perceptions, our findings indicated that the benefits of heritage language maintenance wasn't predicted by any of the factors that we examined. However, elements for sustainable heritage language maintenance was impacted by two factors. One of them was time spent in Hungary, and the other one was time spent with Hungarian friends and families. And I think this is actually in line with what was reported in a former presentation. So the importance of community is absolutely clear based on the numbers in our research as well. And then you'll see that the importance of parental efforts are also very important. So this is just a reminder of the two questions for more in-depth analysis, the qualitative, to analyze the qualitative data, we did thematic analysis. So we read the answers provided on the survey to the open-ended questions, and we looked for themes based on those answers in response to the research question. We coded the data and then categorized everything nicely. So here we are. This is a snapshot of the answers to the question related to the purpose of maintaining the heritage language. So parents' responses were categorized into four overarching goals. We found 161 statements that were about the goal of heritage language maintenance, and you can see the percentages listed here for each category. So that's the percent of the statements or vignettes that we found that related to that category. Language skills was the most common goal expressed by the participants. And most participants expressed the importance of proficiency in the Hungarian language. And in particular, 40% of the vignettes related to this. And basic language skills were emphasized for the most part in order to communicate with Hungarian family members. These professionals who immigrated to the United States all had family back in Hungary, their parents, and other family members. Fewer parents emphasized the ability to read and write in Hungarian, and very few also emphasized developing academic skills in the Hungarian language. The second category with respect to goals was the acquisition of knowledge and life skills. And this category included things such as learning new languages as a benefit, and in this case, it would be Hungarian, cognitive and academic gains, access to the European culture, access to schools and jobs in Hungary. And you can hopefully read the quotes. Just due to the lack of time, I don't think I'm going to read all of them, but for instance, in this case, one parent mentioned that Hungarian language usage developed a better organizing and better methodical thinking process too. So these parents had a really good sense of how learning another language and how bilingualism might help these children with developing certain critical thinking skills and organizational skills that otherwise wouldn't be possible. The third category was cultural heritage and Hungarian identity. And so, for instance, one parent said that my child is Hungarian because his mother is Hungarian. Being Hungarian means that we speak in Hungarian. Language plays an important role in our identity. So other parents, very few parents, expressed that although they are from Hungary and the Hungarian culture and Hungarian identity is really important, but they also spoke to their dual identity after having lived in the United States. The second quote refers to or highlights that we continue to be patriots of Hungary, and of course we are patriots of the USA. We love both of these homelands, and we hope that our children will think in the same way, that they will love these two homelands as well. And then the last category was only 8% of the vignettes referred to or belong to this category: deep relationship with the Hungarian parents, and getting to know and understand the parents better with the language, with Hungarian. And I think the quotes really express this nicely. One of the parents said, "For me, this is my mother tongue, and it is the language I use to express myself the best. It is the language I use to establish a relationship with my children, and the language I use to say everything I want exactly the way I want. The Hungarian language is beautiful, and I want my children to live this." And so I think a lot of these parents expressed how the Hungarian language was really useful with expressing their love, their emotions, their anger, their frustrations through language. And they believed that it was only by speaking Hungarian, and that wasn't possible to do that in speaking any other language, such as English, for instance. So they held this belief that the Hungarian language was really important to connect with their children, and for their children to connect with their parents on a deep emotional level. How are we doing with time? All right, so moving on to the second qualitative question, we were interested in the factors that impacted the children's ability to maintain and develop the Hungarian language. We identified 223 statements in the surveys that we received, and this is a table to summarize that. The three categories or themes that we found were opportunities, consistent use of the Hungarian language at home, and Hungarian school and community in the US. So you can see these are familiar based on former presentations too. So it's really interesting to see that, I think. And these are the total percents for each of these categories based on their occurrences. You can see that in this table, we have two columns, facilitators and challenges. So for all three themes, there were examples for that theme being a facilitator of learning the Hungarian language, whereas other parents or some parents spoke to the challenges related to that theme. So and I'll provide some examples for each. So for instance, opportunities, Tinda, you reviewed this in the literature really nicely when you spoke before, that travels to Hungary, use of technology to communicate with the family members in Hungarian, for example, Skype, or even just using technology to watch videos, listen to music and Hungarian folk tales and things like that. Access to a babysitter, a Hungarian babysitter was a theme that occurred, and access to Hungarian books. And you can see that this can all be a facilitator, right? Thanks to modern technology, I'm able to stream Hungarian kids shows, et cetera, et cetera. But parents also spoke to the opportunities as from the challenge perspective. So they actually talked about how the English speaking environment really makes the maintenance of Hungarian difficult for them. They spoke about the long school day. They don't see the kids as much after they start school, and so that has an impact on their language maintenance. There's not enough time in the day if everybody's working, that it's really hard to find the time to read with the kids or engage with the kids in the Hungarian language. And they also spoke about being hard to get hold of books, which was really enlightening to hear that in Cleveland you have access to books in libraries. That's really awesome. And they spoke about lack of online programs, and they talked about how travel is very expensive, so it's hard to afford it for some families who may not have the means for that. And also they would like to see more support from the Hungarian embassy, so they thought that was a challenge to not have support from agencies if they weren't close to some of these neighborhoods or some of these larger cities where the Hungarian community was more vibrant. So the vitality of the language was important. Consistent use of the Hungarian language at home. Some families commented that it's always in Hungarian, and other families commented that, especially the ones where only one parent spoke Hungarian, they saw this as a challenge, that in this case, her father doesn't speak Hungarian, and that her half sisters who visit on weekends and whom she adores don't speak Hungarian. And so in each family, this looked different in terms of how they perceived this in their specific cases. Hungarian school and community in the US, whether the family was an active participant because they lived close to such communities, or whether the community thought this was, or the family thought this was a challenge because they lived far from Hungarian communities, and that resulted in difficulties for them because maybe they couldn't get to these opportunities for their children. So I think I'm just going to skip this because we're way behind time, and Tinda did such a great job with the literature that really, I think you hopefully saw the theme and the patterns in her review of literature and what I shared about the findings. But to conclude, the parents who participated in this study, they agreed on the importance of maintaining the Hungarian language, and they actively supported their children in developing the heritage language. And really, there's a lot of literature that speaks to the parents' role, that emphasizes all the hard work and effort that parents really need to be committed for them to be able to help their children not just learn Hungarian, but also maintain that Hungarian language in an environment where that language is not spoken, that's not the mainstream language, such as in the United States, as well as there's not that much support if you really think about it, from schools or from society in general, for these families to develop the heritage language. They understood their role in the process, and they recognized challenges. They recognized facilitators, including time, money, and consistent hard work that is required for the maintenance of the Hungarian language. The Hungarian state, the Hungarian embassy could certainly play a more active role, and should provide more help for families, especially ones that are far away from communities where the Hungarian language maintenance, or people who are interested in maintaining the Hungarian language have access to more resources maybe. Just a recommendation to dig deeper into the understanding of parents' views on heritage language maintenance through a case study approach, possibly. There were really a lot of interesting stories that emerged, and Tinda is going to talk about the follow-up to this study shortly. So I'll just stop sharing, and once again, I'm sorry for the technology unsavviness on my end here.